So I just finished watching FPS, the definitive first-person shooter documentary from Creator VC. Their producer and co-writer reached out to me from Creator VC and offered me the opportunity to take a look at a screener version of the movie, and I was really excited for that. I've been a fan of the Creator VC documentaries in the past, like In Search of Darkness, those three movies. I've bought those, really enjoyed them. But this documentary right here, it's available for pre-order now. If you pre-order it now, you wind up getting your name in the credits. I know from In Search of Darkness, getting your name in the credits is kind of cool, but like when you get to that point, you're like, okay, where am I? The credits crawl just goes on and on and on. But that was pretty cool. So you can have that opportunity here. But I just want to kind of give my impressions of this documentary. I like documentaries. Video game documentaries, I really love, and I've probably watched like every single one of them out there just because it's something I really enjoy, learning the history and stuff. But sometimes, documentaries can be a little dull at times or kind of lose you. And this one, in all honesty, when I jumped into it, I was like, man, this is a long ass documentary. It's about 4.5 hours long. I thought they were going to lose me. Something was just going to get real boring and I was going to lose interest. But I was just sucked in. Now, it was long. I couldn't watch it all at once. I wanted to, though, but it was just getting late, and then I had to, get up the next day, like, screw it, let me watch the second half of this type of thing. And then I watched it a couple more times, kind of skimming through, taking notes, took a lot of notes, because there was so many things going on, like, holy crap. But what I really liked about this documentary is there's a lot of, like, relatable experiences. They talk with a lot of developers, people behind the scenes with how these games were developed, the history of where first-person shooters like evolved from, old things like Maze War at MIT in the 70s to Battlezone with the vector graphics in the 80s. It was really cool to see that stuff moving on, going into the the Apple computers in the 80s, the origins of id Software. There's a lot of John Romero in this documentary, and it's always cool to see him talk about his experiences. And seeing a lot of these developers, recognizing other people's and other developers' accomplishments, how they expanded from that, and the evolution of the hardware and software and computers and whatnot, getting to the point where we are today, to the point where they were from the 80s to the 90s, was really cool. They showed so many games in this documentary. There's just tons of stuff. Them talking about texture mapping with Doom and how that came to the next level of first-person shooters, with the scale, the angles of the graphics, and the movement speed, the lighting, the sound, textures, being attacked on different planes. Like that was like revolutionary at that time. A lot of stuff that people may like not really think is all that crazy nowadays, but back then it was like, holy crap. And we wouldn't be where we are now with games if it wasn't for these people back then and their accomplishments. So really awesome stuff. They go into talking about, like I said, tons of games, right? But level editing, the modding scene, how people wound up being a part of these modding scenes, and doing things with AI, and then people developing like Unreal, hitting these people up, offering them jobs. Like I thought that was kind of neat. Hearing about people who weren't even in game development, working with a legit company and getting offered jobs because what they were doing out there in the modding scene. That was really cool to see as well. They talked about like this weird things like Super Noah's Ark, Chex Quest, obviously Doom, Quake, Half-Life. When they got to Xbox stuff, which was around the 3-hour mark, if I remember correctly. It was quite a ways in there. They talked about tons of stuff before then. GoldenEye, all that stuff was really interesting, to hear about. Marathon on the PC, Duke Nukem, the whole section talking about Duke Nukem with John St. John doing the voice, and how they just stole lines from all these different movies. And it's funny because if you're not in the know, especially people nowadays or later on, like even at that time, jumping into Duke Nukem, how iconic that game was, and the lines in that game, how they were just all stolen from movies. It's kind of funny. Like some people attribute, like, these are iconic lines from they came from Duke Nukem. No, they came from like the Evil Dead, stuff like that. Like it's kind of funny. But the Xbox stuff, when we got to that point in the movie, I thought that was kind of interesting. How they were talking about the Xbox being a way to bring Windows into the living room, and that's what the executives at Microsoft wanted. And how the team behind it, like, they're just like, we don't, you know, like, that's great, but we don't even fucking care if it runs Windows. Is pretty much what they just were like, man, that's going to be a gaming console. But they told the execs, like, yeah, you know, this is going to work. It's going to be great. Windows in the living room. And then they put all this stuff together, had a presentation like PowerPoint. Bill Gates printed it out, went to the meeting with them, and they quoted him as saying, "This is a fucking insult to everything I accomplished at this company," and how Bill Gates like yelled at them and was just pissed, like they weren't going with the idea of Windows in the living room. Like, what the hell? And then I think at some point they were bringing up like, well, what about the PlayStation 2? You know, this and this and that. And then Bill kind of got on board. It was like, let's do it. So that section was cool, seeing Halo, all the, you know, talking about that. Going back to a little before then, right before the Xbox stuff, they were talking about Counter-Strike. Like I said, this documentary is so long. Like, I'm kind of getting mixed up on the timeline of events in this documentary. But at one point they talked about Counter-Strike. And that really brought back some memories for me, because back when Counter-Strike came out, like, there was internet cafes around where I live. I remember there was one in Riverside, California. There was one in Redlands, California, kind of in the area where I was at the time. And I remember I worked at a casino in accounting, and like, there were, not every day, but a good majority of the days when we got off of work, because we worked from like 4 in the morning to like noon, 1 o'clock, whatever. When we got off, myself and a bunch of the guys I worked with, we'd drive all the way out to this internet cafe in Riverside, and we just all play Counter Strike. And we would, you know, we would all play together, play against like random people that were at the cafe as well. Man, just so much damn fun, man. I could talk about this documentary all day, but I think this is a good place to end it and kind of give my final thoughts. So I really enjoyed the way this movie flowed. Like, it was interesting from beginning to end. I learned a lot of new things. It was just interesting. The editing, just the pacing was on point, especially for a documentary this long. Like, they had to put in some work here to retain that interest, and they did a great job. Really recommend this one. I'm already invested in Creator VC stuff with the In Search of Darkness documentaries, and this is one I'm going to be buying a physical copy of as well. It's just stuff that I'm really into. You know, there's a lot of excellent quotes in this movie. Great game design, doesn't age when they're talking about older games from the 90s, and that definitely holds true, man. So a lot of interesting stuff. If you're interested, links down below. Appreciate you guys watching. I'm no movie reviewer, but hey, I love this one. Appreciate you guys. Bye.